First off, you've got to give Anthony Joshua a lot of respect for having such a massive leap up in competition since his last few fights and taking on Klitschko. Anthony Joshua's only had 17 fights. It's very rare to see such a leap up in competition like this. And I've been thinking about it as well, and you also have to give Klitschko a lot of respect as well. Not with taking this fight, but more how he's dealt with the last year of what's going on in the ring. For example, he's been chasing Tyson Fury, the first person that ever outboxed him. A lot of people thought Wladimir Klitschko would be the one pulling out of this fight, but Tyson's pulled out twice. And now he just can't get his rematch. And what's Wladimir Klitschko done now that he can't get his rematch? He said, okay then, can't get Tyson Fury. Give me that young undefeated phenomenon, he'll do. You know, Wladimir Klitschko's shown his real class and how he's a real champion by doing this. Now I'll just quickly go through a short comparison of Anthony Joshua, height, amateur record, best opponents in the professionals, and then get on with the real stuff. Anthony Joshua has an amateur record of 40 wins, 3 losses, compared to Wladimir Klitschko's amateur record of 134 wins and 6 losses. Joshua's best achievements in amateurs was a gold medal, obviously, in the 2012 Olympics, a silver medal in the World Championships, and a gold medal in the Great Britain Championships as well. Wladimir Klitschko's best achievements as an amateur is obviously the gold medal in 1996 Olympics, silver medal in the European Championships, gold medal in the Military World Championships, gold medal in the Junior European Championships, a silver medal in the Junior World Championships. They both stand at 6'6". Anthony Joshua has a 82-inch reach, which is a 1-inch reach advantage over Klitschko. Anthony Joshua weighs in at 243 pounds, and Wladimir Klitschko weighs in at 246 pounds, so that's a 3-pound weight advantage for Wladimir Klitschko. Anthony Joshua's professional record is 17 wins, no losses, and 100% knockout rate. Wladimir Klitschko's record is 64 wins, 4 losses with a 78% knockout rate. Anthony Joshua's best wins are Dominic Brazil, Charles Martin, Dillian Whyte, Gary Cornish, and Kevin Johnson. Wladimir Klitschko's best wins, in my opinion, are Kubrat Pulev, Alexander Povetkin, David Haye, Samuel Peter, and Chris Bird. Now obviously there's going to be a massive difference in the level of competition these guys have faced. Wladimir Klitschko's been fighting for 20 years, Anthony Joshua's been fighting as a professional for a bit over 3 years, I think now, three and a half years now. So of course it's not a fair comparison. To Anthony Joshua's credit, he's maybe been preparing himself slightly better in a way, because he has been fighting mostly taller opponents. That's who you're seeing in your top 5 there for Anthony Joshua's opponents, but none of them are world-class fighters yet. Some of them might be in the future, but they're not there yet. What makes this such a hard fight to give a very accurate prediction of is because Anthony Joshua, we just don't know how effective Joshua's going to be against defensively sound opponents that prove to be very elusive to hit, like Wladimir Klitschko. We don't know how Joshua's stamina is going to stand up over 12 rounds. We don't know how Joshua's chin is going to stand up on the top level when they're getting hit through every round leading through that fight. I mean, he had that scenario with Dillian Whyte, but Dillian Whyte doesn't punch as hard as a Klitschko does, or a Deontay Wilder does, or probably, yeah, Povetkin or that does as well. And obviously there's some questions about Klitschko now. How much slippage is Klitschko going through now that he's just reached 40, coming on 41? Is he shot? How will the 30 months of inactivity affect Klitschko in the ring? Now I disagree with Wladimir Klitschko being shot. At 40-year-old, of course there's going to be some slippage there, But the question just is how much slippage. I don't think he's going to be completely shot. I still think he could beat the vast majority of the top fighters quite decisively or easily. The main reason I'm reading that people think Wladimir Klitschko is shot is because of his last two fights, obviously. Now, Wladimir Klitschko's last two fights were against Tyson Fury and Bryant Jennings. And Bryant Jennings and Tyson Fury shared some similarities, believe it or not, in the ring. They both took on a very defensive role in the fight, and it made Klitschko find it very hard to land anything clean on them at all and work them out. Now, it's not just Bryant Jennings and Tyson Fury that share this similarity. David Haye had the same similarity as well, and so did Sultan and Bragimov to a certain way. For example, when Wladimir Klitschko fought Tyson Fury stayed on the outside, used a lot of movement, used his reach to keep Klitschko away from him. Bryant Jennings held a high guard a lot of the time and kept his distance, a lot of lateral movement, and then tried to jump in and land body blows. David Haye, though he was more aggressive in the first 3 rounds, also took quite a defensive role. He liked to stay out of range of Klitschko and then try and counter and jump in with a right over the top to catch Klitschko with. And if he missed, he'd fall to the ground, so Klitschko wasn't allowed to start throwing any punches back on him. Now, Sultan and Bragimov, you may be wondering why I've thrown in Bragimov in there. And yes, Bragimov doesn't have the same kind of movement as Jennings, Haye or Fury, but what Bragimov did do is he took on the defensive role in the fight again as well. He put most of his weight on his back foot, he leaned right back, and he tried to just keep Wladimir Klitschko at distance the whole time, the only way he possibly could. That's the similarities between these 4 fighters. And also another similarity is all these 4 fighters all won rounds of Wladimir Klitschko. So just because Wladimir fought 2 of these fighters in a row, it doesn't necessarily mean he's shot. He was just unlucky to come up with this kind of similar style twice in a row against Bryant Jennings and Tyson Fury. Just to show what I mean, imagine that instead of Bryant Jennings, Wladimir Klitschko fought Sultan and Bragimov before Tyson Fury. Do you not think people would still be saying, oh, Wladimir Klitschko, he's shot, he's too old now? They'd be saying exactly the same thing if Wladimir Klitschko fought in Bragimov just before Tyson Fury. And the whole point of this is that we're discussing Wladimir Klitschko versus Anthony Joshua, and Anthony Joshua does not share the similarities with Bragimov, with Haye, with Jennings, with Tyson Fury. He does not use a lot of movement, and he certainly doesn't take a defensive role in the fight on at all. He's going to be coming forward. He's a very stationary fighter. He fights flat-footed. He has his feet flat on the ground to try and generate as much power as he possibly can in his punches. He's a far easier target for Wladimir Klitschko to hit than Jennings or Fury or David Haye. That's the point. If you want to make comparisons between Wladimir Klitschko fighting anyone recently, you're better suited looking at more stationary fighters. Obviously Thompson, I would say, has better movement than Joshua. Pianeta, I think that's how you pronounce his name, sorry. He took a more defensive role in the fight, but Whyte and Kubrat Pulev, yeah, they were quite stationary during their fights, and they didn't use a lot of movement at all, and they didn't take on a very defensive role in the fight. And I'm not saying that, obviously Tyson Fury and Jennings are a lot better. I would say Kubrat Pulev is better than Jennings, but I would say Jennings is better than Whyte, and I would say Tyson Fury is better than Kubrat Pulev. And I would also say, obviously, Joshua is a better fighter than Whyte and Kubrat Pulev, and he punches, far harder than both of them fighters. I'm not trying to make that kind of comparison. I'm not saying Joshua's at their level. What I'm saying is, if you're going to compare styles, you need to compare Wladimir Klitschko fighting Whyte and Kubrat Pulev to get an idea of how Wladimir Klitschko is going to deal with Anthony Joshua, instead of comparing Wladimir Klitschko to fighters that move around the ring a lot, like Anthony Joshua doesn't do. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, I never wanted to bring up the Olympics when it came to Anthony Joshua fighting a real top level opponent, and that was because I was always going to hope that Anthony Joshua, you know, fought someone, a B. So what I'd class as a B level fighter, like people that have tried to make it to the very top but just haven't made it yet. People like Pulev or Povetkin, someone that kind of caliber, or David Haye. But obviously that's not happened. So the Olympics is actually slightly relevant, I think, to this conversation. And the reason why it's relevant is because that was the last time Anthony Joshua fought what I would call a world-class opponent. Obviously not world-class as in a sense as a professional, but world-class in the amateurs. Someone that's his peer, that's his equal. The last time they fought was in the Olympics. So, and it's been 4 years ago. He's obviously got better since then, but it's still worth bringing up. And Wladimir Klitschko, I thought I'd bring up his record for his Olympics in 1996 as well, even though that was 2 decades ago, just to make a bit of a comparison here, just to show the different stages where they were at that point. Obviously, Joshua had less fights, but Wladimir was significantly younger than Anthony Joshua in the Olympics. So, with Wladimir Klitschko in the Olympics, he fought Lawrence first. It was a 10-8 points decision to Klitschko. Then he fought Levin, knocked him out in the first round. Then he fought Lezin. He won quite decisively, 4 points to 1. Then Pia Wolfgren, who also fought in the professionals as well, and he won that decisively, 7-3 as well. Now, Joshua first fought, I think that was the Cuban Savon. That was kind of a controversial win for him. It did look like Savon was beating him decisively in, I think, the first 2 rounds, and I think Joshua looked like he was slightly better in the third. He went on then to fight Zhang. He beat him decisively, 15 points to 11. There's some people say there's some controversy about the next one, but he won at 13-11. Then he fought Roberto. I thought he did better against Roberto than he did against Savon, but it was 18 points to 18 points, and he did a count back, and the decision went to Anthony Joshua. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is Wladimir Klitschko, when he won, there was no controversy. It was clear that he won every single fight. When Anthony Joshua won the Olympics, there was a lot of controversy about the wins, especially against the Cuban Savon and Roberto, who he fought the final against. And obviously the reason why this is worth noting is because that was the last time Anthony Joshua fought someone that was at his level. So it's worth noting at the very least. Ever since Emmanuel Stewart changed Wladimir Klitschko's style, he's always proved very elusive and very hard to try and land any clean shots on at all. Of course, I'm not trying to say it's impossible. I mean, people will bring up certain shots. Fury landed good clean shots on Klitschko, or Whack at the end of the 3rd round landed a good clean shot on Klitschko, and they'll pick out shots, but just for them bringing up certain rounds where they landed good clean shots on Klitschko actually proves and doesn't counterprove how elusive Klitschko actually is. Now, just like I say, of course I'm not saying it's impossible to land hard on Klitschko. It happens in most of his fights, someone lands clean on him, but he's very hard to land good clean shots on. He proves very elusive in a fight, and it's going to be very hard for Anthony Joshua to land good clean shots on him. And I think I just brought up there, even when he lost to Fury found it very hard to land anything good and clean on him as well, and that was with Fury's 3-inch height, and 4-inch height reach advantage over Klitschko. Joshua doesn't have that same kind of advantages over Klitschko that Fury had, or the same movement, which I've already talked to as well. And just like I said, of course, Wladimir Klitschko does get landed good clean shots on him. But when was the last time you've seen Wladimir get caught with as many good clean shots as Dillian Whyte managed to land on Anthony Joshua throughout their fight. And Dillian Whyte's definitely Anthony Joshua's toughest fight so far. And who here thinks Dillian Whyte is more skilled than Klitschko, or has more power than Klitschko, or is stronger, or has better footwork, or he has more reach or height, or faster than Klitschko? Nobody does. So if Dillian can land good clean shots on Anthony Joshua, Klitschko is going to find it easier to land good clean shots than Anthony Joshua. But unlike how Anthony Joshua managed to find it easy to land on Dillian Whyte, Anthony Joshua is going to find it very hard to land the good clean shots he needs to land on Wladimir Klitschko to take him out of there. Now I've measured up, power, strength, hand speed, foot speed, all these different kind of attributes, and marked who has the advantage and what, just to go through them. I thought it'd be interesting. Now, power, yes, Anthony Joshua has a 100% KO rate, and a lot of people will be looking at Anthony Joshua's last fights and how he just blasts everybody out of there. But you've always got to ask yourself, well, who were them opponents that he blasted out of there? They weren't, top tier guys at all. And when you look at Klitschko, well, Wladimir Klitschko, a quick fact about him, he's knocked out more opponents that have never been knocked out before in heavyweight history. So it's not like, that's one way of measuring power as well. He's not feather-fisted at all. These are two big power punchers. So I can't give anybody the advantage in power, because Anthony Joshua could prove to be more powerful than Wladimir Klitschko. Or we might find at the end of Anthony Joshua's career, Klitschko punched a lot harder than Anthony Joshua. We just don't know yet. So I can't give anybody the advantage there. When it comes to strength, Anthony Joshua looks a stronger fighter. Just because he looks a stronger fighter doesn't necessarily make it so. If you ever want to hear about how strong Wladimir Klitschko is, there's old boxing forums where Wladimir Klitschko's chef used to be on them, and he used to talk about, Wladimir Klitschko bench pressing this and what his workout routine was and everything. It was quite impressive, but I'm still going to give Anthony Joshua the advantage in strength. Hand speed. Now, a lot of people say to me, how's Anthony Joshua going to deal with how's Wladimir Klitschko going to deal with Anthony Joshua's hand speed? And I've looked over these fights over and over again, and I can't say that I believe that Anthony Joshua does have faster hands than Wladimir Klitschko, and he certainly doesn't have faster hands than a young Wladimir Klitschko. And people point to what Charles Martin said. I couldn't see his right hand coming, the right hand counter coming. That's what knocked me on the ground. It was very quick. But you also, if you look at Pulev, ask Pulev how fast Wladimir Klitschko's left hook is. Pulev couldn't see that left hook coming at all. So I thought Wladimir had the fastest hands before I looked into this, and I'm still pretty sure that Wladimir Klitschko has a faster hand, so I've given him that. Wladimir Klitschko definitely has the better footwork and foot speed, and the better defence. I've been over this with how elusive he is. I also think Wladimir Klitschko is definitely the most skilled boxer, and I shouldn't have done experience and youth because it's obvious, but Klitschko gets it on experience, Joshua gets it on youth. Stamina, we all know that obviously the old Klitschko has stamina problems, but Wladimir Klitschko, when he fought David Haye and Whyte, he still looked very fresh at the end of them 12 rounds fight. We know Klitschko can go 12 rounds. He's proved that time and time again. When it comes to Anthony Joshua, we don't know yet. He could prove to have tremendous stamina. Just because he's very large and heavy looking does not necessarily mean he can't go 12 rounds. Mike Tyson could go 12 rounds very easily at the start of his career. And a lot of people point at, Dillian Whyte saying he was gassed, and I'm not entirely convinced he was gassed towards the end of that fight. I think he had more in the tank yet. Obviously, we don't know if he can go 12 rounds very easily without getting puffed out in the last few rounds. But we've just got to give him the benefit of the doubt right now, so I haven't given anybody the advantage in stamina. Anthony Joshua does go to the body better, so I've given him that. A heart, with Anthony Joshua, of course, we just don't know yet. Now, a lot of people after the Brewster and Sanders fight said, Wladimir Klitschko's a tin man. He doesn't have a heart. But how many times was he knocked down against Sanders? And obviously he wasn't knocked down against Brewster, but Purity and Samuel Peter. And how many times did he get right back up again and try and continue to fight? Every single time. So saying that he doesn't have heart is very unfair for Klitschko. He does have heart. And chin as well. So I can't give anyone an advantage with heart, obviously. And chin as well. We don't know again with Anthony Joshua how his chin is going to prove. A lot of people look at the Dillian Whyte fight and think, Joshua was almost knocked out. He wasn't almost knocked out. He wasn't even knocked down. There's a big difference between even getting close to being knocked down, let alone being knocked out. Just because you get knocked down doesn't mean you're going to be staying down. So, we don't know how good Anthony Joshua's chin is yet. And a lot of people are saying, well, let's look at Klitschko. He's got a glass jaw. Klitschko does not have a David Price jaw. He's never been put to sleep before. He's been knocked down. He keeps getting back up again. And he has been in with a lot of power punches throughout his career. Samuel Peter managed to survive that fight and won that fight. He won every single round apart from the rounds he got knocked down in. He went up against David Haye, who again is a very tremendous puncher. Got through that fight again as well. Alexander Povetkin's another big puncher. He got through that fight too. So Klitschko has been up with power punchers. He has won against them. He has been hit cleanly against them and won the fight. So he's got a better chin than a lot of people think he does. If he did have a glass jaw like David Price, he wouldn't be world champion and have 18 title defences behind him at all. So you can't give anyone an advantage in chin either at this point. So how do I think this fight is going to go? Well, a lot of people are going to see these two big power punchers coming together and expect this to be a very explosive fight. And I think they're going to both fight like they're very aware of each other's power. And Joshua is used to fighting stationary targets, which Wladimir is not. And as soon as Wladimir senses, with all his experience, senses any danger at all, he's going to use his superior footwork to back away from Joshua, circle him, and get back into a position that he feels that he's in control of. I can see this fight being fought very cautiously for the first few rounds. They'll go try and work each other out. I think Joshua's going to have his best work in the first half of the fight before Klitschko works out what Joshua's weaknesses are and starts to expose them. Then I see Klitschko taking control of the fight and winning a comfortable unanimous decision. So that's my prediction for this fight. Klitschko to win by a comfortable unanimous decision.